So something else that I found really useful, and why HTML really is an incredible output format for agents is when you want to test something that you're building, and maybe you haven't quite hit the place where there's a lot of UI yet to test, then you can basically ask the agent, and in this case it was Fable, to build an HTML page that allows you to test the current state of the project. Now, I've seen various iterations of this. I'm really impressed with this one, so I thought I'd make a video. So this is for CSS console, more on that in a separate video, but we've essentially reached the end of phase 2. And I can do some stuff in the terminal to see the output, but it's not quite enough. I really needed something more. So I asked Fable to build something. And this is what it produced. And so here is what's happening. When I serve this, I have this HTML page. I can read all the things. It's also built it in light and dark mode. Interesting. And then I have this playground. It shows me some CSS source code, the fixture markup when you run, and then here it is going to show me the output. And now there's a bunch of evals essentially that I can work through. And there's little checkboxes that tells me whether I've verified that this actually works. So it shows me what's going to be in the CSS source and in the fixture, and then what I should expect and anything else. So it's a nice big QA document. Now, of course, the agent can use this itself to test the work 100%. That is another use case for this. But for me, it was important to also interact with this and actually see. And they've in this way, I can figure out not only does it work, but is the output what I'm expecting? Do we need to tighten it up? Do we need to clarify it? Things like that. And do I actually want to go to phase 3 and continue building this tool? Now with this, I could answer all of these questions. Now let's look at one of the simple ones first. So I click load. Now it's loaded in, let me zoom in maybe a little bit. So now it's added some CSS here. It's added the HTML, and now I can run. And so what it's saying down here is it says, when I run scan, I should expect an event order of probe start, record, probe summary. The color should resolve to RGB123, and the guards should be, the contested value for guard should be false. So the output isn't being contested, and this is what the summary should look like. So essentially what this does is it's going to log the value of color. So if I run this, we can see exactly what we were expecting down here. So probe start, record, probe summary. And then our value probe is for the class solo. And here we can see our color as RGB123, and it's uncontested. And we can also see that our summary is what is expected. And then I can check it off and like, yeah, cool, that is exactly what I want. And as we go further down, there's more and more complicated things that it's starting to test. The one that I thought was really clever, I think it was in here. Yeah, here we go. So an inactive probe still has boundaries. So here you can see it's setting a crazy min width. So essentially this CSS will never execute in the browser unless you have a massive screen. So if we load this and we run, we have the probe started for unreachable, but there's zero records, zero diagnostics, and we didn't match anything. And that is what's expected. Because in the browser at this size, that CSS is never going to evaluate. So there'll be nothing to probe. I thought that was a clever one for it to include here. Another one that it did, let's see. Yeah, this one was interesting. So the CSS is card and then a space and then a before pseudo selector. And then in our HTML, we've got an article with our class card, and then we have two children inside there, a span and a bold element with neither of them have classes, but they're children of this. And so it says records target the descendants. So the child and the grandchild, never the target. And It's because this means card star before. So this applies to everything inside card. So if we head up and we test that out, and we run the scan, we can see our span with ID child resolves to that color, 1, 2, 3, and our other child of our grandchild, yes, with our ID grandchild, there we go, is RGB 1, 2, 3. And we can see our total, oops, is 2 and 2. Nice. And this way I could step through every little thing. And as I mentioned, we did find some things that didn't quite work. I think the one was, oh, here, for example, it was outputting the color and the width, but not the value of the content property. And so that was a bug. So now when I go back and I load this and I run the scan, we can actually see content high. So that's also being output now, which is really useful. And there was another one that was pretty interesting as well. But what I'm getting at here is essentially I asked the agent, build me something in HTML format that I can use to test this phase of the project we're at. And this is what it came up with. And of course, if this wasn't the first thing, then I could have iterated on that. Just in this case, I thought it did a really good job of doing this. Oh, here's the other one. Now that I have it, let me show you. So it says display none falls back to computed values. And basically what this does is we have a hidden box. So it's display none, width is at auto, and it's a margin left of 25%. But then on the actual element, there is a width of 300 pixels. So width should report auto, margin left 25% with no box, resolved values fall back to computed values, and a percentage stay a percentage. But here's the thing, it added additional things. It says remove display none and rerun. Now margin left should resolve to 75, which is 25% of 300, and the width should be 225. A used width auto on a block box is the containing block minus margins, borders and padding, so the margin claims 70. So it goes into all of that detail. And then it says delete the margin declaration too. And now the width should report a full 300 pixels. So now we have like 3 test cases we can do here. So we can go back and we can just run this one. And we're seeing width auto, margin left 25%. And then we remove display none, right? And then we run the scan again. Now we get that 22, 225 and 75. Now we remove with auto and we run it again. And here we have our margin left of 75. And now, of course, we don't see the width because the width is inline. But, and this is, did I just find a bug? Because here it said missing requested property. Aha, because here it says log the width. And there's actually no width property. So now it's giving us this additional feedback saying you're trying to log the value of a property that does not exist. The one thing I think might be a bug, and this is something I can go back to now, let me double check, is here. It says delete the margin, delete the margin declaration. Okay, let's go back to that. So I deleted the wrong thing. So if we go back here and we delete the margin, so boop, now we'll get the 300 pixels from the width that's being set over here. So yeah, very, very interesting. And this is how I can go back and forth, check my own thinking, check what's been implemented and find any gaps that there is. So really something useful that I would highly encourage you to do. Again, you can give the agent this tool that it built for itself essentially to test the work. You can keep this in the code base as a way to check regressions, and you can also test and get a feel for where your project's at. That's not just looking at the code or not just looking at something in the terminal. Hope you found this useful, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.